stone-focused, avaricious eyes upon ruined Mordheim. Treasure hunters descended upon the city, vying with both mutated horrors that claimed the ruins as their own, and crusading zealots who sought to prevent the taint from spreading. Inhuman creatures filtered into Mordheim, staking their own claims. An endless pilgrimage of the greedy and ambitious, fighting and dying in a place now called the City of the Damned.
This is a review for Mordheim City of the Damned. It was released by Rogue Factor on the 20th of November 2015. It is available on Steam for $39.99. The amount of Warhammer games in the past year have been well and truly staggering. For a guy who hasn't really gotten a chance to grow up with the Games Workshop IP, I felt extremely intimidated coming into it. However, due to the release of Fat Shark's Vermintide a few months ago, I think it was back in October, I was able to jump into the world and really get to see the diverse and bleak characters and the lore. The next big Warhammer game that was brought to my attention was Mordheim City of the Damned, and I sure am damned for not having this under my radar any sooner. Mordheim City of the Damned is a turn-based strategy game that came out as early access back on the 20th of November 2014. The game is based upon the tabletop variant of the game Mordheim. Playing off of the story of the game, a twin-tailed comet smashes into the imperial city of Mordheim. After its catastrophe, the city is plunged into utter chaos with weird stones strewn all over the city. These stones house great and terrifying magical properties within them, forcing all the factions to fight amongst themselves to claim them for their own purposes. Now, there are currently 4 available factions to choose from, including the Reichler mercenaries, who are essentially the Empire's hired arms, tasked to claim these weird stones in the name of the Empire in order to rebuild their city. The clan Eshen, who is one of the 4 great Skaven clans that consist of assassin ratmen who are collecting the stones for their weaponry and consumption in order to gain even more power for their eventual attack on the surface world. There are the Sisters of Sigmar, who are holy clerics who are trying to collect these vile weird stones and lock them away from nefarious ne'er-do-wells. Finally, there are the ne'er-do-wells themselves, the Cult of the Possessed, representatives of the Chaos faction who seek to obtain these weird stones in order to appease the Shadow Lord with their offerings. While these 4 are all extremely unique from one another, the developers have gone on to say that there are interests in creating more factions. However, priority is placed on balancing the currently available 4 factions for the game's official launch. Mordheim is an unforgiving city. It goes to show that the game is just as brutal. In this game of strategy, even if you win, it may not mean you really have won at all. When a unit loses all their health during a skirmish, the character is considered out of action for the remainder of the battle. At the end of the battle, win or lose, the character will then have a chance to either completely recover, have minor injuries, lose a limb, or even end up dying. When it comes to combat, at the beginning of each campaign, you may have a chance to deploy your starting forces in the position you'd like them in. After that, you'll start the turn with an initiative check for all the combatants on the field. The character with the highest initiative will go first, the second highest goes next, and so on. At this point, you'll have to go around gathering weird stones or try to take down the enemy warband. By taking down the warband, you have to either kill off enough of them or just kill their high value units to force them to rout. High value units are units with high morale, and most of the times those are either leaders, heroes, or impressive units. The rest of the warband are henchmen that supplement these units. Each character will take their turn to move however many action points they have available and perform as many actions as possible in relation to their offensive points before they conclude their turn. Once the battle meets its conclusion, you'll get to see the losses sustained, loot gained, and just how well your units fare from their wounds during battle. The amount of mechanics laced within each faction are extremely detailed. The mercenaries are extremely versatile and are capable in combat with their swords, shields, axes, and longbows. The Skaven are a highly mobile group and can suck up weirdstone along the map in a blink of an eye and even take out of position enemy units. The Sisters are an impregnable fortress as they tumble through and blitz everything in their path with various buffs and divine magic. The Cult lives up to their chaotic alignment with their unholy strength and random mutations that can provide either a boon or a hindrance to the situation at hand. With so many variables, each match is unique and can fill players with dread against certain factions, or glee as you rip through them to shreds. Before and after battles, you'll be placed in the war camp where you can manage your team. By managing your team, I mean bandaging your wounded crew and being robbed of your precious gold to pay for your warband's continued services. During this time, you'll also be able to customize your units, allocate stat points, and train your various warband members on the extensive list of skills and spells that are currently available to them. You'll also get a chance to send shipments of Weirdstone to primary and secondary factions in order to receive faction bonuses, which include the ability to hire units from other factions and item bonuses. Now, these primary factions are the main core concept of the game, where you have to collect a certain amount of wisdom and ship them to them every so often. If you miss your quota, you end up getting a strike. You get 3 strikes, you lose. Now, the last thing you can do is access the shop. In these shops, you can buy equipment and gear and item for your units, or you can sell item, gear, loot, and all that stuff that you picked up from the previous battle in order to get some much needed gold. Now, the stuff inside the shop cycle every so often, and you will get to see when exactly the next restock takes place. The team over at Rogue Factor have done an incredible job with their take on Mordheim, a city devastated by evil corruption and ruination. The rubble of various buildings, the complete destruction of locations, the darkened skies, every aspect of the environment has been turned upside down to show a beautifully morose city. The green hue that is ever present in this game is a prevalent theme that represents the central and most important piece of the game, the Weirdstones. With a plethora of different maps to fight in, the environment is always refreshing and doesn't feel stale. Aside from the environment, the character designs are incredibly on point with the original game. The ability to customize these characters with both color and model changes gives you, the player, a lot of option to feel overly attached to your henchmen, as bad of a mistake as that may be. When you purchase Mordheim City of the Damned, you also score the entire soundtrack within the game's files. There are 13 tracks within the game, all of which was composed by Stefan Premieux, Rogue Factor's residential sound designer. The use of heavy drums and horns accompanying the chorus helps to paint the savage war amongst the factions as they clash against one another. The subtle instrumental changes for each of the factions' theme also demonstrates the uniqueness, from the sporadic rhythm and tone of the chaotic cultist to the slightly eastern influenced shadow assassin Skaven. All the small details show off Premier's capabilities as a sound designer on this project. Now, aside from the glowing remarks I've made so far, there are some gameplay issues that blemish the game only slightly. I've come across small bugs such as enemies instantly glitching through corners of a wall or doorway, or characters getting caught on invisible walls between the base of a staircase and the floor, or sometimes the way that the finicky hitboxes of various interactables on the ground are sometimes tricky to interact with. I've also had some frustration with the way looting corpses work. How, if a corpse is within a circle of another character, it is unobtainable until the character moves out of the way. This is frustrating due to the fact that if these items are not taken while the body is still on the ground, all weaponry and gear return to the opponent with no risk of being stolen. It would be incredibly silly to not be able to pick up an enemy's purple rarity weapon just because an ally's circle of attack is covering it up. Another issue I could nitpick on is the way the camera works when it's the opponent's turn. When the controlled enemy is not inside of an allied unit's vision, the camera would get locked into position and won't move anywhere else. This gets silly when having vision is integral with planning and strategy. During this time, I find myself opening up the map screen and trying to plan using that. It would be extremely beneficial if at the very least, when an enemy isn't in sight and you're waiting on their turn to end, you can cycle through the allied unit's perspectives and plan using that. Now, the final problem I have with the game is the deployment system. In many campaigns, a player will have deployment zones all over the map. The only way to select these deployment spots for a character is to cycle through them using A or D. In a particular level, I was ambushed by Skaven, and when the map began, I had over 50 deployment zones all over the field. I wanted to place all my forces together in one ruined house so they could get together and defend. Because of the inaccessibility to quickly choose a deployment zone, I had to cycle through 25 times in either direction to reach the optimal point to deploy all 8 members of the warband. This became a tedious slog, and I am truly hoping I don't have to experience that again. I feel the best workaround for this issue would be to allow deployment through the map and clicking on deployment spots. When it comes to gameplay against AI, there is no mistaking it. The AI is generally a whole lot dumber than against a human opponent, and that said, they're no slouch. Within the campaign, I've had my entire warband of Sisters of Sigmar wiped completely by a team of cultists, who was able to throw armor-piercing and melee damage buffs on their henchmen. It was a lesson I won't ever forget about the cultist, and that's the beauty of the AI's simple mindset. They play by the books, and that's extremely good practice against a true player enemy warband. That said, once you get used to the AI, you'll start to understand that they don't have the capability to be reserved, something that can be easily exploited, especially in the hands of a smarter player. Now the multiplayer component is where I've had the most fun. I got wrangled into this game with friends and we've set up a tournament between the three of us. The multiplayer mode Skirmish pits you against players online in a campaign match. And because the nature of the game is so similar to the original tabletop, the game effectively becomes a digital tabletop version of Mordheim between real players. Discussing strategies and throwing them against one another has been an absurdly thrilling time. The only thing to complain about, which can't be the game's fault, is that because the enemy warband is controlled by a player, they'll require more time to think, and so characters' turns can take a while. Due to not having a time and place, this isn't really something that can be fixed. However, a time would hurt the nature of this strategy game as well. Mordheim, City of the Damned is an incredibly enjoyable game. Despite its bugs and game design choices, the AI's simple nature lulls players into a foolish level of overconfidence that will only bite them in the rear. Having a friend to play this with can lead to some heavy rivalry as you try to take down each other's best units. The game's got lore oozing out of it, and the beautiful environment truly paints the game exactly as it is. A dark, dangerous, and breathtaking experience. At least the last breath is. This has been a video review for Mordheim, City of the Damned. This video will be up on the Gamespresso channel as well as my own personal channel. The written review will also be on Gamespresso and you can find the link below. Happy scavenging!